Hey everybody, this is episode 4 of Tandem Pod, and this is our first episode with someone that is international. That person is Jackson Manzie. Jackson has been a longtime friend of mine. I spent a lot of time with him in California over the course of a couple summers with Tyler and Alex. We had a lot of good times there, and just him and his personality was really memorable to me, and obviously his riding. I'm sure most people recognized him from the crew that he started, Friendly Flicks, or the Friendly Crew, based in Sydney, and it just had videos of him and all the locals in it. Many people followed his riding since then, and then he moved on to be sponsored by Proto and was in their videos such as Armageddon, and it all got cut short because he developed this back injury that he couldn't figure out, and it forced him to just quit scootering completely. I know a lot of people were probably wondering what happened. It was apparent that it was a back injury, but his Armageddon part came out, and then that was kind of just it. Nobody really knew, so I'm glad I have the chance to give this opportunity to him to tell his story about his back. I randomly got an email one time from Jackson saying that he resolved his whole entire back issue, and I was so glad to hear that. I believe it was a year or two later when I had started this podcast, he emailed me again saying that he wanted to tell his story on the podcast, which I was really honored that he would think of that. So here it is, Jackson Manzie. How did you first start scootering? What got you into it?
I first started, the first scooter I ever got, the first I was ever exposed to it was, I would have been 7, I think, which was in Indonesia. Strange place to run into them, but it was exactly the year 2000, so it would have been when razors and like the first boom kind of started. And my dad and my mom had moved my family there. They both work in like the health field, so they were over there. I'm pretty sure that they were working on like the development of a new hospital in Jakarta, the capital city. We were kind of just me, my sister, and my parents, or my mom and my stepdad, were in Indonesia. And that Christmas, my mom bought me a scooter that was like bright red. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't like a brand name that's around at all anymore. I've never seen one of the same ones since. It was like made of completely of mild steel, like super heavy. And I basically just used to ride it around my house, which was like this huge mansion basically. Because as expats, like when you, like especially at that time, if you're an expat in Indonesia, you were pretty much treated like kings, and everything was so cheap there that like the rent for a shitty house in Sydney was the same as the rent for like a mansion, literally a mansion in Jakarta. Like our house had like big winding marble staircases and like a waterfall into a pool and like heaps of crazy shit. But I just used to ride the scooter around my house on like all the marble floors and stuff, and I just thought it was super fun because it was like so smooth.
So did you do any riding outside of the house?
I don't really remember doing it outside of the house, only because like in Jakarta the pavements and like roads are terrible, or they were at that point. So I was pretty much just like, we had a huge driveway as well. I think I just mainly like rode it around the house, and there was definitely no skate parks in Jakarta at that time.
Well, yeah, I guess a driveway is all you need. It was the training ground for Jordan.
Yeah, yeah. I had to say though, I wasn't doing tricks at that point. It was purely just like riding around. The tricks came much later. Like getting interested in the actual trick side of things was probably like I came back to Australia. We only lived there for a year. I came back and I don't think I touched it for a number of years. I think I got back into it because my cousin from a different state came and stayed with my family for a little bit, and he like brought a scooter with him, or he got one while he was down here. We were just doing like stuff in the driveway again, and we wanted to go to a skate park because there was one in my house. And I remember pretty vividly like going there and just getting abused by skaters. And I was pretty put off by that. And then like he went back home and like I kind of just kept up with it. And I think that I was trying to do tricks for like maybe a year or 2 years, maybe even, before I even like checked or had the thought to like Google like scooters and end up finding Scooter Resource. I can't remember whether I found Scooter Resource first or, like I was speaking to you about before, that video that you said, funnily enough, that you edited, and I've already forgotten the name of the skate park. The one that was in New Jersey, what was it called?
Oh yeah, it's called Xtreme Wheels, and it was in New York. Yeah.
So I believe that was the first video I ever saw. It was a video of a competition at Xtreme Wheels that had like Josh Toy, Jesse Macaluso, and a lot of the Razor guys. I think Dan Barrett was probably in it. Tyler Hale and BK and most of those guys, I think, were all in that.
Yeah, that must have been pretty crazy to see because, I mean, relative to the early progression of scootering, that was kind of late. So if you had never seen people doing tricks before and stuff like that, like the level of riding, even in that, was pretty high. So it must have been shocking.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing, for sure. I remember just being like, holy crap, like all this stuff that I had, and there was nothing in like the video like explaining what the tricks were or like how they were being done, so I could like barely even understand how any of these people were like doing these things on their scooter. And then I think I saw a video of Terry Price like right after that, and I think I ended up finding like a bunch of Phil Lagettie and like Coedie's videos very shortly after that as well. So then I kind of became aware that there was like a scene here and there were people that were like that good in Australia as well.
The first time I understood that I wasn't the only scooter rider in the world was when I saw RVM1, like when I got it with a scooter.
Yeah.
Did you ever see RVM1?
I saw it many years after I started scootering. The pro model, I found Scooter Resource, I joined in August 2006, I'm pretty sure, which I think was a fair while after RVM came out. And I don't think it was packaged with like Razor Pros anymore, at least none of the ones that I bought here. In fact, I actually remember where I saw it. It was at Tyler's house. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure like the very first trip that I took there with Hayden O'Connor, who is another Australian guy from Queensland.
Yeah, because I remember I was just doing no footers and X-ups, and I didn't even know that other people scootered. And then I saw RVM, and they were doing fly-out tricks at Woodward and like backflips and tail-ups and stuff. And then after that, I just forced myself to learn to tail up, but it took so long to do.
Yeah, I remember that it was something that took me a very long time as well. I can't actually even remember where I landed my first one. That's kind of sad. That's a major moment.
I remember when I landed my first one, I just kind of threw it. It was like an Andrew Broussard catch, like the ground caught my scooter instead of my feet. and then yeah, I was just rolling away and I looked down and I was like, what? I did it. But it was probably a year of trying it.
Was it on flat?
No, it was off a bank.
Yeah, I definitely did mine like fly out. Definitely.
But I was such a little kid though. I think I was just like too tiny to really do it. I think I was like 11 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah. I would have been the same. I was like, as a kid, I was really small as a kid, and I grew like super late. So I had no strength to be doing like crazy stuff early on.
But now there's like little scooter prodigies that are that age that can do everything.
Yeah, it's insane. I think that comes partly with the there's obviously like a lot more people to be like teach you how to do stuff, and the scooters are so much better. The generation now, in fact, it's been for a couple of years at least, are like kids that are starting out without foldable scooters that they've had to bolt. John Archer, I think, was the first person I ever met who had never like been on a foldable one. He started on like an Ultra Pro.
So why do you think the Australian scooter scene exploded so big, and like skating and BMX, when you go to a skate park there, is definitely the minority activity, and it's not like that in America.
I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, which I think you mentioned before, like in a different time, was that America is so much more spread out compared to here, like in distribution of like the population, like distribution of skate parks even. Because in Australia, and my stats are probably a little off here, but at least 90% of the entire population of the country just lives on the coast. The majority of that is the East Coast. Like the West Coast, Perth is pretty spread out. So like the East Coast, I think is super connected. And I think that you just, when things were starting off, you had a much better chance of going to a skate park and running into another scooter rider, which was probably not the same case for like the States. As for why it like became really big and started outnumbering skateboarding and bikes, it might have been guys like Phil and Coedie that just made it popular. Maybe it was the accessibility. Like at the time when scooters came out, they were very accessible here and they were everywhere. But like definitely how it got big is definitely the connectedness of and like the proximity of all the skate parks in the States and like how densely populated our country is in like one area.
And is it still like that? Like scooters are the majority at the skate parks?
Yeah. I mean, back then they were, I wouldn't maybe say that they were a majority, but they were definitely pretty popular. But now they are for sure most definitely the most popular like action sport in Australia, I would say.
It's probably not just kids that are riding them. Like it's probably a lot of people that are actually very good at scootering.
The skill level here is pretty insane, like for the amount of kids that actually are into it and do it. And I mean, I work for Scooter Hut here, which is the biggest in Australia, if not the biggest in the world, scooter company. And like the sales that we do are ridiculous. There is a huge base here of kids that are doing it, and it drives a lot of companies. I mean, most of the biggest companies in the world are from here, like in terms of sales and like distribution. They're from Australia.
Those skate parks that people are riding, I always noticed that it looked like they were all either built in the mid 90s or early 2000s, just covered in graffiti, and a lot of them looked really gnarly, like stuff that the normal person couldn't just go there and ride. So was there an explosion of the cities building those skate parks at that period?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely a boom, which would have been around the mid 90s, 2000s, maybe like the very early 2000s. And then for Sydney, at least, there wasn't a lot of skate parks built for quite a while. I think at that time as well, there weren't really any professional skate park building companies either. They were mostly just like contractors that were given the contract for a place. So my local skate park, for example, Chatswood Skate Park in Sydney, was built by a pool manufacturing company called Blue Haven Pools, that made like just your average backyard pools. The whole skate park was made by them, and the transition is horrible at that skate park. It's like cottage cheese. And yeah, like definitely a lot of the features in the old skate parks are pretty gnarly. Like they're definitely nothing like the new breed of skate parks that are being made.
Yeah, there's a lot of parks in America like that looked like they were built in the early 2000s or the mid 90s. Like there was one that was really close to me, actually. It was called Dublin Skate Park, and the mayor of that city, his son designed it off a Tony Hawk Pro Skater map, like the video game map. So he basically designed, like, in the park there were 14-foot vert quarters, not just quarters, but there was nowhere to get speed for them, because in Tony Hawk you don't need to get speed for anything, you just do it. and then that skate park was built by people who lay concrete for sidewalks.
I have a feeling that quite a few skate parks here were made in the exact same way.
It was almost so bad that it was fun because the stuff was so weird and hard to ride. But just those quarter pipes, it's like, what if somebody just went up there and tried to drop in? Like, they would die because the vert, it had like 4 feet of vert, like too much vert for how tall it was too. It was insane. I remember one time Tyler Bonner was riding there and he like disastered that quarter. It was like so long ago, and it was unbelievable. Like I don't even know how he did it.
I feel like that at that point in time as well, there was at least skateboarding, which would have been the most visible like action sport to the public. There was still a big emphasis on like vert skating, and it was still semi-popular. So I think that definitely influenced like how a lot of skate parks were made as well. Like we have some really crazy old bowls in Sydney that were they were definitely just like designed for skateboarders and skateboarders only.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the footage, like John riding those bulls. It seems like skate parks in Oregon or something.
Some of them are. Yeah, a lot of the older skate parks are transition based. There wasn't really a lot of plaza style stuff like we're getting now. Like the majority of the skate parks that are being built in Sydney now, and there is another boom going on now, are really like plaza style ones, and there's not that big of an emphasis on. There's always a bowl that's like incorporated with the skate park, but it's just plaza, which I'm sure is the same in the States as well.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's kind of made me realize that I think I only like shitty prefab parks on asphalt. That park I was talking about that had the really tall quarter, they tore it down and they built a new park recently. It just basically looks like a street league course, and I don't know, I don't really have much fun there.
No, they can definitely get pretty boring, those kinds of parks.
Were you in the group of the people who first started Friendly?
I came up with the idea myself.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know if it was Aaron or who it was.
No, it was, I had the idea for a little while. Like I had like been exposed to what was going on in the States. And it's funny that we're actually doing this interview now because just from my like, Facebook memories, you haven't had Facebook for a long time, but there's like a feature that allows you to look at your like past posts from like years and years and years ago. On the 5th of June, there was a post where I posted on Aaron's wall the word friendly flicks, and that's like the furthest back that I can find it, which was from 2010, I think. So yeah, I had just come up with I just really wanted to make a crew, I guess, that was street orientated because that didn't exist in Australia, and there were so many people in fact 2010 there wasn't that many people in the States that were doing that and only that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It didn't really exist in the world. I mean, people that made videos at that caliber, it was only scooter companies. The whole crew thing wasn't really a concept yet, I don't think.
There was like TPC, and there was like,
Yeah, I mean there is TPC, but it just wasn't at the level. I don't think.
what the level is the same level as friendly.
Yeah, I just think it was a different era. Like at that time when TPC was filming their videos and stuff, it was kind of you just rode whatever. Like you rode street or park.
I mean, when I first started it, it was me. I had come up with the idea, and I told Aaron. Obviously, I wanted him to be an integral part of it. So it's essentially me and Aaron that are like, if you wanted to give someone the label of like the founders, it would be me and Aaron together probably, because we had already kind of talked about this stuff a lot, but I kind of just gave it a name. So full credit to Aaron as well. And we were still like heavily riding skate parks. We were still at an age where me and Aaron didn't really have our own cars. So if we were to really be searching for spots, it was kind of hard. The idea was in our heads. We were definitely out there like searching for street stuff. My original idea for the YouTube channel was just to focus on like different areas of Sydney, different individual people, and I would kind of just make them a video. One of the first videos that was kind of decent was I did like a day video, or like over a couple of days at Glenmore Skate Park, which was Aaron's local skate park, and like all the locals there, and I like put a lot of effort into it, and like the music choice and all of that. At the start of it, it was kind of like just focus on individual people, make them a video. Like I like this guy's riding, this guy's my friend, I'll make him a video, with the emphasis of trying to include like as much street riding as I could. Later on, my idea for Lux came about, which started off completely differently to how it ended up. My original idea was that I wanted to make, and the reason why it's called Lux was that I wanted to make a video that was half filmed entirely during the day and half filmed entirely during night, because I had gone and bought a bunch of lights and was planning to save up and get like a generator and stuff. So that was like the original idea. I mean, but then I ended up going overseas and getting sponsored by Proto, and was put on like the back burner a little bit or like I had camera troubles. There was always something that was like delaying it. And anyone that was following it from the start knows that like it was delayed a very long time. And it ended up just being like a full crew video rather than the original concept, because that proved to be way too difficult. I don't think anyone's just saved up enough money to like buy a generator. So that never happened. Then of course all the stuff with my back started, and then I just stopped writing, and then I stopped filming. Everything since that point has pretty much been taken over by like Aaron and Kevin. Like I don't have much to do with Friendly pretty much at all anymore. Like I don't do any of the product or like videos or filming or any of that stuff, and haven't for ages, because I kind of separated myself from scootering for quite a while I was sick. I guess it was definitely unique for its time, for its place. Like in Australia, there was definitely no one else focusing on the same thing.
Yeah, but like I said, it really was globally really unique. I mean, I don't know if you guys really realize that or not, but I think
Well, I guess not. So what do you mean? In what way?
like you had a following. I mean, from what I could tell from talking to people in America, you had a following the same size or larger than any major scooter company. Friendly was essentially a scooter company or a scooter brand as far as recognition. People just loved those videos and knew about them.
I don't think so. I mean, I could definitely see that from the more recent years, like maybe at the point where I stopped. But sure, maybe that was true. I mean, we were definitely. I think that I don't think there was anyone else except for maybe Nick Hodgkins that was like putting as much effort into videos and filming. And I was like watching skate videos religiously. That's where I was getting all of my ideas, and I just saw that like their videos came out so much better than the people that were just doing day videos or doing mini videos with a bad camera. Like I bought a VX, and I just thought that was the way to go. So maybe we were just the first to take that approach. Yeah, it's a shame my idea never panned out, because that would have been pretty cool.
I mean, at least Lux still came out though.
Yeah, and that's pretty amazing, to be honest. That's mostly because of Sean Furs, who is like one of the filmers and has been for ages for Friendly. He's a very old friend, and he's been around for a very long time too. He pretty much, of the clips that are in that video, I would say at least 60-70% were filmed by him, and the whole thing was edited by him as well. Definitely can't leave him out. He's powerhouse. And he had kind of like the same approach too. Like we were on the same wavelength. He was super influenced by like skate videos, and spent a lot of money on his setup and put a lot of effort into like all of the filming.
To start, do you want to explain your dad living in LA and your dad's job?
Yeah, so my whole connection to America starts with my dad. And my mum and my dad split up when I was very young, when I was probably just older than 1. My sister had already been born, and my mum and my dad had already been living in LA for over 10 years. The reason why they were there was my dad's a musician, and he was originally in Australia. He was in a band that was really big in the 70s. They had a number 1 album here, and they just played kind of 50s rock music. So they were really popular here, but then I guess the career and the opportunities in Australia are obviously not anywhere near as big as they are in the States for the music industry. So my dad moved to LA with my mum, and he started. I mean, I think he moved there specifically because he wanted to get involved with movies. I think I could be wrong on that, but anyway, that's what he ended up doing. He ended up being a composer for films for like almost 20 years, and he was mostly working on horror movies. So he did a lot of like B-grade horror movies, and he did like music videos. He's worked for like a huge range of people. Like he did one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels, and like he worked on a music video for like the Insane Clown Posse, because they're into that whole horror shtick. And
Really?
Yeah, man, and had seen his work.
You know the Gathering of the Juggalos?
Yeah.
They moved that to a different location, and it's 1 hour away from me.
Do they sell Faygo in your state?
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, if they didn't before, they would now. Yeah, they're hilarious. Like my dad spent like 6 months with these guys. They were making some sort of music video that was kind of like in the style of like Michael Jackson's Thriller. Like it was an extended kind of movie-esque story with the music mixed in, and they hired my dad to like compose the music for the acting sections, which is pretty hilarious. So yeah, anyway, that's why he was there up until the age of 12 or so. My dad would just come here to visit because my mum didn't really want to send me and my sister to LA by ourselves. So I never visited up until that point, and then from the point of being 12, I guess my mum just decided that we were old enough to go stay with my dad by ourselves. So we would go and spend, a month or so every summer for you guys. So that's June, July for us. That's winter. We'd spend a month or so there, and we would kind of just hang out in LA. And my dad lived right off Melrose Avenue on North Curzon, which is a couple of blocks from Fairfax. So we were in a really happening kind of area. So LA was super fun, and he'd usually organize like a road trip for us to go somewhere, like a different state, or Vegas, or Grand Canyon, or we went up to Sequoia and like New York and down south, a whole bunch of places. So I got to see a lot of America when I was pretty young.
At what time when you were in LA, were you doing any scootering when you were there?
I definitely didn't take my scooter for the first couple of trips. The first time I would have taken it would have been, I know that it was like the trip the year before I met Tyler for the first time. So I guess it would have been 2009 would have been the first time I took it. And I was still pretty bad back then. And I would just kind of like ride around the neighborhood. And my dad took me to a couple of skate parks, but I was kind of vibed out by the rules that all the skate parks have there, like that they're skateboard only, and they're like enforced by cops, which is bizarre. Like if you come from Australia, there are no rules at any skate parks anywhere.
Yeah, I think that was the time though, because back then it was definitely like that everywhere in America, and for whatever reason, I mean it's just logical, but it isn't like that anymore. Like there's no rules at any skate parks.
So they don't give tickets out or anything anymore if you're...
No, it's like pretty much any state I've been to. I think the cities that built the parks found some sort of different option for insurance, because that was what it was always about. It was always about insurance.
What about helmets and stuff? Do they still ticket people for helmets?
Nah, that
Really?
there's like no rules. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
At least like in all the parks in the Midwest. I don't know. I know California was always pretty severe for that, but the thing is, I can't remember what year it was, but there was like a California government budget crisis. Like the government shut down, I believe. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And I remember, I think I was in LA at the time with Tyler, and Tyler was like, oh, well, those people that watch the parks are employed by the government and they're not working. So we could just go wherever we wanted at that point. But I also think that those jobs just didn't really get filled again after that.
They didn't come back.
Yeah, I think it was kind of just over.
Because that was such a pain. It was such a pain in the ass.
So did you develop a half American accent and a half Australian accent by going back and forth so much?
I think so. Yeah. I used to have people comment quite a lot that it wasn't like for all words, but like certain words I would definitely say a little bit differently. So I used to have people comment that like I had a bit of an American accent. I used to be like, I think I still am on some things. Like I still say Z instead of Z, which is an American thing. I definitely used to place a bit more emphasis on the R's in certain words. I think that's dropped off quite a bit because I haven't been back to the States since 2012. But like I would definitely always pick up like slang and stuff while I was over there. So like I would come back with words that were like not common for the lingo here.
Yeah, and it's the same way reverse too. I remember when you were in America, or you and then Aaron would say stuff, and Tyler and I would just not even. It was like a different language.
I remember one that stood out, which people here say all the time, is CBF, which is can't be fucked, which just means like you can't be bothered to do something. Except me and Aaron would have been saying Siebes, which is like the shortened version of that, and I think Tyler picked that up. We say the boot of the car instead of the trunk, There's lots of different like words that have been picked up from passed down from like Britain, which are in our slang, which just make no sense to Americans at all.
Yeah, I remember when I went to Australia, it was difficult at sometimes to pick up on it. I
Yep.
I went there thinking, oh, they speak English. Like this isn't going to be that crazy of an international travel, but yeah, there were a lot of words that I couldn't even really decrypt. It was
Yeah.
just
We're really lazy with our language. So we have like a lot of shortened versions of words, highly compressed versions of words, most of which end with like E. Television is like telly. McDonald's here is Macca's.
yeah. I remember everything ending with an E,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
bikey gangs.
Bikey gang. Yeah, that's a classic one.
Yeah, it's weird because it sounds like you're making fun of them or something.
Yeah.
Like if there was a
That's
if
what
there
they.
was a person from a biker gang in America and you said you was in a bikie gang, you would be dead.
Yeah, it's kind of like effeminate almost.
The wages in Australia are almost two and a half or triple the normal wages in America. So by working at the scooter shop, you were able to make in Australia, which is just like a normal amount of money, but in Australia is like, I mean, in America is it a really good wage. So you were able to just not work for 3 months straight and come to America and have plenty of money to live off.
Yeah, I was pretty cashed up, definitely. On the trips that I stayed with Tyler, I was working at Skater HQ, which was kind of the only store in Australia at that time that stocked scooter parts. They were kind of like the be all and end all of like the shop that you go to buy stuff and like getting sponsored. And so I was working there. I was working in their store in Manly by the beach, and I was working 4 days a week, I think. And they were pretty long hours. For an 18-year-old, my wage would have been $18, $19 an hour around that point. And then there's penalty rates for Saturday. Like you get paid 1.25 times the $18 on a Saturday if you're working a Saturday, and like 1.5 on a Sunday. And I was always working weekends, so saving up for America was super easy, especially since I was still living at home, and I had like no responsibilities.
Yeah, that's unheard of in America, especially the weekend pay. I mean, it makes sense,
Do you guys
but
not have that there?
oh no. I'd say the only kind of like pay you get is overtime pay.
That's rough, man.
Yeah, and the minimum wage is like $7 and something cents.
Even now, and I mean, have now moved on from being just like a retail worker to I manage the store with Kevin in Sydney, the Scooter Hut store, and I work 3 days a week. And Sydney's an expensive city, but I can still afford to, live out of home. And I've been renting in a pretty nice suburb in Sydney since like 2011, and I can afford to do that on 3 days work.
Did you ever see the documentary Super Size Me?
Yeah, yeah.
So that guy did another documentary, and it was about living on minimum wage. I forget what it was called. Columbus, Ohio, where I live at the time the documentary came out, like all the statistics added up. It was determined that it was the hardest city in the country to live on minimum wage.
Jesus Christ.
So he moved here and tried to do it, and he couldn't do it. Like he just ran out of money. He couldn't pay any of his bills.
I don't understand. I mean, the main difference is, it's not like we just get paid more and there's no trade-off. Because the difference is that in Australia, where for the most part we're a socialist nation, so our taxes are much, much higher than the United States, and people think, and bizarrely, like people think that in the US that their taxes are really high, and there's all this rhetoric all the time about lowering taxes, and in Australia we pay a lot more tax. But I guess I mean, in a socialist country, that ends in you having healthcare, for one, proper insurance, and like good community services and stuff. So that's what the trade-off is. We get paid more, but we pay a lot more to live in our society.
Can you think of some memories from the summer in LA, like the 3 month trip?
Which year are you talking about? The first trip I took there or the second one?
I guess either.
Memories, man, there were so many. The first trip there where you, me, Alex, Tyler, and I think Greg. Greg was with us, wasn't he?
I picked Greg and Elmer up in New York City. I drove from Ohio to New York, and I just picked them up, and then I drove them to California.
Yeah, that's right. That's nuts. You drive across America a lot.
Yeah, I've done it a lot by myself too, which I never really mind driving by myself, but people always think they're like, how do you drive by yourself? But I don't know, it's usually fine.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't mind that. I've done a little bit of Route 66 with my dad. For most of that, there's not a lot out there, and you kind of just sit and you just look. I mean, I love American wilderness and American like rural area. That was a bad description. Just rural America is like super interesting to me, and it's much more interesting, I think, than the bush here. Mostly just like the vegetation here is kind of boring to me, at least. Like we have a lot of the same trees, and a lot of the rural area kind of looks the same.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of sort of the San Diego area, I think, or like LA when I was in Australia. It's just really dry.
It is, yeah, it is very dry. I mean, we have rainforests and stuff, but they're mostly up in the tropical area of Australia, which is up north, like the northeast. So Sydney, and I've spent most of my life in Australia in Sydney, the vast majority, it's pretty boring compared to the stuff I saw in like Sequoia and like the giant redwoods and Yosemite and like Half Dome, and like we have nothing like that. Driving in America for long distances and I did a lot of that with my dad because we road tripped a lot. I love that. Yeah. Anyway, back to memories though. The first trip was definitely a very formative time for me because I would have been the first trip I took there. I would have been 18 or maybe even 17. It was my first kind of exposure, I guess, to spending a lot of time with what were like professional scooter riders, I guess, and people that took like a really serious approach to like street riding and spots and filming, and everyone in America had cars and it was really easy to get places. Everything was planned out. Also, I think independence too. Like if you were staying with Tyler, his mum gave Tyler a lot of independence. We had a lot of freedom. I think Tyler's dad, Carrie, just like organized a hotel room for us when we went up north, like towards San Francisco. Like he just organized a hotel room for us to go stay at. And we just like drove there and just stayed there and scooted in San Francisco. And there was like, he called up to like he called up to those cafeterias and like organized us food in the universities that he worked for.
Yeah, Tyler's parents are amazing.
Yeah, I love them. I still talk to Debbie like all the time. She would send me messages, and has been for years. At one point, I was probably like talking to her more than I was Tyler. Yeah, I think it was just like I was just kind of in awe, and I was really excited by scootering in America because it was so different to Australia. It wasn't just like, meet up at a skate park and we'll go ride these two shitty spots that are within riding distance because no one has a car. Go to Tyler's house. We're going to plan this like epic journey up into San Francisco and be completely by ourselves. And I'm with guys that are older than me, that are really nice and really cool and really different. Like I hadn't met anyone like Greg or Elmer or you even. Definitely never met anyone like you or Alex for that point, or Tyler. I loved San Francisco. That's one of my favorite cities.
You were definitely at the right place at the right time too, because if you went anywhere else in America, I don't think you would have gotten that experience. Like that time in LA was really that was the place to be, kind of.
For scootering.
Yeah, like other places in America, it wasn't the same. I mean that's why I spent so much time in LA at that time, because
It was very close knit.
there wasn't any other place you could go that it was that people were sort of on this mission to just ride and progress.
Yeah, I guess that's what made me come back. But yeah, San Francisco, I remember I loved, and like I remember, like it wasn't even just the riding stuff, like the stuff that we would do when we weren't riding. Like we would make plans to go to a beach. We'd go to a restaurant and like eat some food that you can't get in Australia, and like snacks and like shitty junk food and all that kind of stuff that you do when you're that age. it was just really cool to be able to do that with, I guess, guys that I admired. Because I definitely admired all of you guys, and you were big influences on my behavior and my scootering, and I definitely took all of that back to Australia with me. Andrew, meeting Andrew was so cool. That was my first exposure to someone that was like so dedicated to scootering and to, making parts and experimenting, and he was doing something for scootering from like a grassroots kind of place, which was not happening in Australia at all. Like I said before, we kind of had just one shop that was importing stuff and selling it and, running some competitions, but there wasn't like that kind of creative expression, I guess. Street riding, filming, making video parts, just for the sake of it, that kind of stuff was not really going on in Australia. And that's what I ended up wanting to emulate with Friendly, I think. And certainly my first trip with you guys was a formation point for that. I remember coming up with, I think we were driving to San Francisco or maybe back, and I came up with DTDF, which I still think a lot of people don't know what that actually means, which is hilarious to me.
Whenever people say what it is and they're right, I just say, no, that's not what it is. Like, really? That's not what it is?
Oh man, I was actually having this discussion with someone at work the other day because someone asked me what it actually was, because they thought it was down to drive fast, or what. I think that's what you guys call it, right?
I don't know. I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, that's what he thought it was, and I just like explained the whole thing to him, and he was like dying laughing because it's just so dumb. Yeah, Alex had a great sense of humor. I miss that guy.
I'm so bummed he lives in Arizona, because Arizona is one of my least favorite places to be, because it's just a desert and there's no trees, and I just feel like the life is getting sucked out of me when I'm there.
Yeah, I miss that guy.
I'm so bummed I can't see him more often. I actually saw him in March in New York, which is good.
He's still actively scootering, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. He's actively doing everything. He's just riding through the desert like hundreds of miles a week on his bicycle and scootering and
That's so insane.
motorcycling. He just never stops.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the other like big things for me was that my social life in Australia has always been quite insular and quite small. Like my group of friends was quite small, like throughout school and even afterwards and even now. So branching out to a completely different country, making friends with other people that had similar interests to myself, like on my own, completely on my own, without my parents, without my sister, without anyone I knew from Australia, was a huge, I guess it's like a huge leap of independence that you kind of have to make at that age to like become an adult. Looking back, that was really important.
The formative years, like you don't really know what you want to do, but you need to do something.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about how you got sponsored by Proto?
No, I don't even remember really. I think that you were the one who asked me whether I would be interested, but I don't know the story behind it, no.
Yeah, well, you made that video the first time you came to California to the Jimi Hendrix song, which unfortunately is now muted on YouTube.
Yeah, I know.
Recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, after that video came out, it was the next summer, and you weren't in California yet, but Tyler and I were. And I remember I was at the Proto shop with Andrew, and I pulled up this video, and I was like, hey, this guy is coming here this summer. You should sponsor him. And Andrew watched the video. He's like, all right. That's it.
That's awesome.
And
that's awesome.
That's extremely rare. I mean, I think the only other person that it happened like that was Chema, where Chema is the only person who sent a sponsor video to Proto and got sponsored.
I mean, I met Andrew too, like before that. I went down with you, and I remember, man, actually that's a pretty good memory too. we slept on his really old workshop's floor because we couldn't stay at his house. I think he had like a girl coming over or something. I had a blow up mattress that had a hole in it, and it completely deflated, and I slept on the bare concrete in his workshop area. It was so shit. No, I think it was a little bit earlier than just before I came back to California, because Andrew paid for half of my airfares for the second trip. So it must have been a little while before that. No, that was definitely a dream come true, man. As I said, everyone that I was riding with there, you, Alex, Elmer, you guys were all on Proto, and I was already riding the wheels and like the SCS and stuff, and that was definitely like the company to be on at that time. Like if you were a street rider. Yeah, I was super stoked, man. I was so stoked. Thank you. I've probably never thanked you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny about that air mattress. Yeah, I just remember waking up in the morning and mine was like inflated, and then I just look over and you were right next to me and you were just like looking at me because you were obviously awake and couldn't even sleep.
I didn't get I slept in the car the entire way home because I did not sleep like a wink at all. It was because I'd put my mattress on top of like directly below some fucking machine. And there were just like metal shavings, like metal shavings all over the floor. And I just put this stupid flimsy mattress directly on top of it, and it just had like dozens of holes in it.
When I was watching that video of that you got sponsored by Protobuy and just like your next like Armageddon part, that was only 5 years ago, or like 5 to 6 years ago, and I'm always so amazed just watching other people's videos too at how small the scooters were. They were so tiny.
My bars were very short.
And the deck too. The deck was really tiny too.
I mean, but that was part of availability too. I think at that point there definitely weren't any decks that were longer than 20 inches. Maybe even shorter than that.
I think you were one of the first people to ride a 22-inch long deck. Can you think of anybody else?
Are you talking about the custom made Orions that we made?
Yeah, the Proto, because I remember you had that 22 and everybody was like, "Man, this thing is unrideable." Like,
no, it was 22 and like a half. I got him to make it to like 22 and a half. It was really long. Yeah. I can't think of anyone that was riding one that long, but I think Elmer might have made one that was 22, possibly.
No, I don't think so. I think he was kind of into the shorter decks still. Yeah, it's just funny because I haven't grown in height probably since I was like 15 or 16 years old, but my scooters have just been miniature, and it's just weird how it's a perspective. It's like what you think is acceptable, and then you just get used to it. Have you ever heard of the company Aztec Scooters? They're like a new company.
Yeah, we stock them at Scooter Hut.
Last weekend, I was riding in Cleveland, which is just a couple hours away from me, and the guy that owns Aztec lives there, and I rode his scooter, and his deck was 6 wide by 24 long.
Wow. One of the guys I work with, he's either riding an Aztec or one of those Elite Supreme decks, and he got cutting board, just cut off a piece for either side of the deck and like drilled it in so that it's 6 wide, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah, I know. Like when I rode that Aztec, they like he's really into making parts super light. So the deck, even though it was enormous, it felt really good.
Yeah, well the guy at my work who has it is Billy Rainbow, who like drills out everything on his deck. So like his scooter's like 20. It's either I think it might even be a 23, so it's like 23 by 6. And it's so light, and it just feels amazing. I definitely think the industry will go that way. Maybe it won't go to 6 wide, but it'll definitely go bigger than 5 at some point.
Yeah, the tough thing is you can't make a square deck wider than 5 without getting bigger wheels.
Oh, is that because of the actual clearance and turning? Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like his scooter, I mean, the bottom wasn't 6 wide. I don't know how wide it was, but it was definitely wider than 5. And he had like 125s, and I don't know. I just feel like scooters look so strange with big wheels.
Yeah, I don't like 120s.
Maybe it'll just be like another thing where it seems bad now, but in the future, it's just that's how it is.
Possibly. I would like to see some 115s. I think that would be the perfect size, like as we move towards bigger decks. Yeah. And I think Eagle already makes those actually. So, someone has still got that proto deck. Okay, so the story is when I had quit and I wasn't riding scooters at all, my scooter was just at the shop one day, and this American kid came in and he saw it, and this was at the point where Orions were off the market. And he knew who I was, and he knew the size of the deck. He paid me like a couple of $100 like just for the deck. And I was like, yeah, man, just buy it. Like I'm not riding at all. I don't give a shit. And yeah, Kevin like ran into that kid at the last Tilt Jam in Chicago, and he was like still running it. Yeah, whoever that kid is, shout out.
Were you satisfied with your Armageddon part, even though the filming got cut short because of your injury?
No, definitely not. I mean, the trip was cut short, obviously because of what was going on with my back. There was a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to do over there just because of like the amount of pain I was in. During that trip, actually, it wasn't that bad compared to how it got in like the year or two after that. But nah, man, I was pretty disappointed. Like Andrew, I felt pretty guilty as well because Andrew had paid for half of my airfare to get out there, and I felt like I had just delivered this kind of lackluster part that was like really short. And yeah, no, I was definitely pretty disappointed with it. I mean, I think the people that I knew had a lot of praise for it. I think after it came out, I watched it like maybe once, and I just like didn't watch it again for years after that because it was just like bad memories. I mean, good and bad memories. I had a really good time that whole trip for sure, but like what the product that came out of it, I was not happy with.
I think people still liked it though, from what I heard.
Yeah, that's the general consensus that I got, but no, I wasn't very happy with it.
How did your back injury start? What was the beginning like?
It started in March 2012, and it just started as like a general kind of ache in my upper back. I mean, if you were a scooter rider at that time and you had bars as tiny as we did, that was not uncommon at all. But it kind of just lingered and it didn't really go away. I figured it was just from the bars, so I like tried out getting some taller bars, and that it didn't really go away, but it wasn't really terrible. It wasn't really like stopping me from riding. It was kind of just, it would be sore after I rode and was like sore while I rode. And like I went on a couple of road trips as a video of like on the Friendly's YouTube channel of like a 420 road trip, which was right around the point where I started having pain in my back. And then right after that I went to the States, but that's kind of how it started out. And I remember one day before you came and were at my house, actually, I just like woke up one morning and it was so bad that I couldn't actually get out of bed. Obviously I'd done something stupid like the night before. I'd probably gone riding and like gone too hard or something. So I couldn't get out of bed, and my mom gave me a muscle relaxant, and that kind of allowed it to get back to the point where I could kind of move. And I just started seeing like a chiropractor. I'm pretty sure you like went with me to one of those appointments.
Yeah, I did go to one of those appointments with you, and you got everything cracked. He cracked your neck, and it looked like he was just killing you.
Chiropractors are awesome, man. that was really good at the start. Like chiropractic it doesn't fix the underlying issue that is causing the injury or the problem with the back, like whether it's postural or whether it's from sports or something. But it releases, I guess, the compression and the tightness in the muscles, so that you can then go to physio and like work on fixing the problem. I think I had like x-rays done, and they told me I had something called Scheuermann's disease, which is where a couple of your vertebrae are like slightly misshapen. I think I may have mentioned it slightly earlier, but I was really, really short until I was 18, and then I grew a lot. Like when I was 16, I probably would have been no taller than, I want to say like 5'5". Between that point and 18, I grew to 6 foot. So I grew a lot, and they were initially telling me that basically I hadn't finished growing. It's basically like a couple of little vertebrae, a little bit misshapen, and this gives you pain, like while you're still growing and while your growth plates haven't formed. So essentially the diagnosis was just like, you're going to have pain, you need to go to physio, and this pain will go away once you stop growing. Essentially, I was just like, all right, I'm probably going to have to do a lot of physio, some strengthening, correct my posture, do stretches, and then once I finish growing, it'll all go away. I also felt really guilty, like while you were here, because that was kind of when had just started, and there was like days on end where I like couldn't go ride with you, and I couldn't drive, because like sitting down for long periods of time would set off like the pain, and it still does. That's one of my main problems now. So like I feel like your trip was really shitty because like I had a car and everything, but I couldn't take you anywhere, and it ended up having to like drop you at train stations, and you just like go off by yourself, which I'm sure you didn't even really mind, but like yeah, I felt bad about that.
The only thing that was bad about that trip was the weather. It was like the winter there when I was there.
Why was it raining a lot or something?
Yeah, it rained a lot, and it was cold a lot too.
Yes, Sydney gets cold, man. It does. Not a lot of people realize that. while I was in America, I could ride, but definitely not to my fullest at all. The pain was kind of getting progressively worse while I was there. So I ended up coming back home early. I kind of still rode every now and then, but the pain was just getting worse and worse every time I did. So I stopped riding, but I pursued like continuing filming everyone. And I just like wouldn't take my scooter. I would just take a skateboard or something. Because at this point I still thought that it was Schumann's disease or whatever they had told me it was originally. And that my bars were probably too low and that had contributed to it. And that like hunching over for the whole time that I was growing had probably affected like the vertebrae. But it just got worse and worse and worse. And the following year or two after that America trip were pretty dark times, I think. We started going to see like rheumatologists and they didn't really have any answers for why the pain should be this bad. It got to the point where I couldn't sit down for 5 minutes even without being in a lot of pain. I was pretty much doing no physical activity at all. Obviously very depressed because chronic pain does really fucked up things to your mental state. The pain is so extreme and you can't ever get rid of it. I mean, it's pretty tough to talk about, but it's important that I do because it's the only way to acknowledge and kind of come to acceptance of, I guess, having gone through it. Yeah, it just went on and on and on, and there wasn't really any answers. I became pretty hopeless, and I cut myself off from scootering kind of entirely, and I kind of developed a bit of a bitter attitude towards it, like as if it had kind of caused what I was going through, and it was the cause of the pain. And I was also obviously really upset, I think angry too, that like I couldn't continue to pursue what I really loved doing. I had just gotten on Proto and I had just tried to film a video part, and then all of that was kind of stripped away and taken away from me. I mean, scootering is still pretty much one of the biggest things in my life, and one of the only things that I consider to have ever been like really good at, like a skill that I was really good at and really enjoyed. And there was the social aspect of it too. Like all of my friends obviously were scooter riders. I don't really have that many friends from school. I have one really good friend from school that I still hang out with, but the majority of my friends that I really connect with are from scootering. So obviously because of what was going on and that I wasn't scootering, I was disconnected from that as well, that side of things. That obviously was very depressing as well. And there was a lot of stuff going on with my family too at that point. You probably remember actually the day that you got to my house, I was going to the funeral of my stepdaughter. Sorry, not my stepdaughter, my stepsister. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, she was in a car accident, right?
Yeah. So there was all of that going on, and like my mum and my stepdad had separated. So there was all of this shit on top of the chronic pain, the lack of explanation of where it was coming from, and we went to quite a few doctors and none of them could really give us any answers. So I was kind of just managing it as best as I really could with the resources I had available to me. My mom is a nurse, so thank God I kind of had the medical background and the help and the kind of experience to try and figure out what this was. But it took a really long time. That it affected me a lot. What ended up happening was I was seeing a counselor, obviously because I was not in a very good place mentally. And he had just met, and I mentioned to him that we had seen a couple of rheumatologists and they hadn't given us any answers apart from what I had already been told, which was to wait it out. Things will get better, even though things were getting worse and worse and worse. He mentioned that he had met a rheumatologist that he thought was really savvy and was really, he was a young guy and he was just really smart and on the ball. And he gave me this rheumatologist's number and contact details, and we ended up going to see him. And I walked into the room, and this was at a point where I could like not sit down at all. So I was standing up the whole time, like in the waiting room in this doctor's office. I explained like what the pain felt like and what the things that were stopping me from doing, how it started, and all of that. And he said that he thought I had something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a pretty scary sounding name, but it's essentially pretty much anyone would have heard of rheumatoid arthritis, which affects a lot of like young people and old too. Ankylosing spondylitis is what I ended up being diagnosed with, and it's essentially a sister disease of rheumatoid, except that it's arthritis that affects or it targets your spine and your hips, like your neck, and it can affect your eyes as well. I don't know, I don't understand that. This doctor ended up getting the correct diagnosis for that, which was, I'm pretty sure I cried, like told me that I had it, because it was just, had just been so many years of not knowing what it was, which is pretty terrifying when you're in as much pain as I was every day. So he got me on some medication. So AS is an immune disease, so it comes from genetics. So it wasn't scootering that did it, although the low bars probably didn't help at all. So he got me trialing some medication. Eventually, we got the medication right, which took care of all of the inflammation that I had in my body, which is what was causing the pain. All of my joints in my spine were all inflamed and had been for close to 2.5 years, and my hips and my neck. It's interesting looking back because, like, if I think about what the pain was like before, it was like a hot pain. And like people that knew me around that point, like whenever they would see me or if they were like hanging out at my house, I was perpetually lying on ice packs. Like that's how bad it was. Like along my whole spine, I just had like ice packs all day, all night.
Wow.
Yeah, which was the only way that I could kind of relieve it without taking like painkillers. Thankfully, I had my mum to kind of regulate that because that would have been a bad spiral. I mean, you can't rely on that stuff anyway for that kind of thing because they're too addictive. But yeah, basically I was just like lying on ice packs all the time. The medication I take now is like a weekly injection. And it's an immunosuppressant. So the reason why I have inflammation is because my immune system is producing too much of a certain cell, which is called a TNF cell. The injections that I take, which are just like a little EpiPen, it just basically regulates that cell down to a normal level. And then that was it. Like once I got the correct medication, the hot pain, like the really intense pain, was just like gone within a couple of months, which was amazing. Obviously, it's a miracle drug in many senses of the word. Like even 20 years ago, this like drugs for this condition didn't exist at all, and essentially your prospects were pretty grim. It was basically like if it goes untreated, essentially the vertebrae and your spine just fuse together, and you basically can't move. And yeah, 20 years ago, people were just like doomed to that fate. So I definitely feel pretty thankful.
Do you have any other symptoms after that?
Yeah, like I still have chronic pain now. It's not at the level that it was a couple of years ago. I mean, it's very hard to judge when you have chronic pain because it's hard to judge which days are good and which days are bad and when you're improving because you have pain all the time. And your mind definitely has a big influence on how you're interpreting it as well, because when you have if you have a negative point of view on things, your pain is obviously going to be worse. But if you try and be positive, I mean, this is all proven science that, a lot of how pain is interpreted in the body is by your brain. I still have a lot of pain, which is mostly just musculoskeletal pain. And what I mean by that is I'm still recovering from the damage that 2.5 years of like rampant inflammation in my body did, because that does a lot of damage to your muscles and to your joints. I'm going to like physio every week, and I do a lot of yoga, and I stretch a lot during the day. And I still have a lot of like the residual effects from that I used to have. Like I still can't sit down for long periods of time, which is pretty frustrating. But essentially I have a lot of weakened muscles because I didn't do any physical activity for so long. Like a lot of the muscles that support your back and like your core muscles, they kind of just wasted away because my body wasn't operating like a normal human being's was. Like I wasn't sitting down and getting up and moving around and doing exercise and stuff. A lot of the muscles that my body relies on to perform things, they rely on the wrong muscles. So for example, like if I'm picking something up, most of the movement should be coming from your core muscles, but a lot of my actions are relying on the wrong muscles. So I have to go to physio to kind of retrain them to be performing correctly, if that makes sense. And that's gonna take a long time. Like I got diagnosed pretty close to 3 years ago. I still have a long way to go.
For one reason or another, I was emailing with you.
Yeah.
I believe close to that time, and you were like, yeah, they actually found out what was wrong with me.
Yeah, I think I did email like you and Andrew and Tyler, and I told everyone what was going on.
Yeah, I just remember it was brutal, like when you're in California, and I was watching this too when I was thinking of questions. I was watching your Armageddon B-sides, where you're in a schoolyard in LA, and you have to like
hanging from stuff?
You have to hang off a tree after every try to like reset your back, basically.
Yeah, driving around in the car, and I was like hunched up in like a U shape, so I didn't have to sit down in the chair.
Yeah, I remember we drove like 6 hours to San Francisco, and you had to like your neck was almost on the seat of the of the car seat, and your legs were like in the air.
That makes me cringe thinking about that, because that would have not helped at all. That would have been making things so much worse.
Have you ever heard of the skate filmer Colin Reed?
No.
He filmed like One in a Million and like the Mandible Claw videos, and also Tengu, God of Mischief, and Spirit Quest. He's a filmer from New York, and he filmed like you should check it out. Like Spirit Quest and Tengu, God of Mischief. They're like really experimental skate videos. He did a segment in Tengu where it was a whole section of people just only skating on roofs in New York, just doing disasters like hanging over the sides of a skyscraper and stuff like that. But I'm not sure what the diagnosis was, but he also had a genetic problem that affected his back. And so the last film he made, Spirit Quest, there was like an interview, and it was pretty much the last film he could physically make. Like he could barely finish it because of his back, and after that he's just done filming.
It's another reason. I mean, there was a point where I was seriously considering moving to the States. Like, I think it was probably after that first trip I took. I just really wanted to live there for a while, and I'm pretty glad that I didn't, because my medication in America, like if it gets denied by insurance, or like it's deemed as a pre-existing condition, which I know happens to a lot of people, my medication's like $130,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and here it's $10 a week. And Australia is one of the only countries that subsidizes it to that point, because they recognize how important it is. But yeah, I mean, if I hadn't been diagnosed, I probably would have been on the same path as that dude. That's pretty sad.
At what point were you kind of like, all right, like scootering is over, I just need to move on, and did you have some sort of plan? Like, did you know what you wanted to do in your life? Because I think I said this in another podcast, but I'm 25 now, and when I turned 24, I had been scootering for 2/3 of my life, and I couldn't even. So that was from when I was 8 years old, and you can't even really remember stuff when you're that young. So I can't even remember my life without scooters in it. It's almost impossible to think of like it's just that void, you know.
Definitely felt that void, but it was still kind of hard for me to actually separate from scootering, because I was working at Scooter Hut this whole time. So I was like surrounded by scooters the whole time, and all of my friends were still scootering. I personally had disconnected from it completely, and I like wasn't watching videos, and I like wasn't even keeping up that much with what my friends were doing, or like what they were filming, or like where they were going, or anything like that. And that was partly like because of what I was saying before, that I think I was really angry that I had it like taken away from me, and that I had been forced to stop when I didn't want to. Your question about did I make plans? No, not really, because I couldn't really determine what my future was going to be at all. It seemed like so bleak for such a long period of time, and I wasn't really sure about like what the future was going to hold. So no, I didn't really make any plans at all. I was kind of just existing, I guess, up until the point where I got diagnosed, and then like the last couple of years have just been trying to get healthy again, I guess. And that's been a big learning curve as well, because it takes a long time to learn how to manage like an immune disease. And I think I'm getting pretty good at it now, because I'm really proactive about my yoga and my stretching, and I go to my physio every week. I've changed my diet. Like as of about 6 months ago, I stopped eating meat, because that's all highly inflammatory, and I have a lot more like fresh food in my diet and all that stuff. So I mean, I'm still pretty much on the path of just trying to get healthy again. For the time that I wasn't scootering, I did dabble a little bit at university, but I was kind of only there to just like give me something to do, and I was kind of only able to do like one subject a semester, because I couldn't sit down for long periods of time. And obviously with chronic pain, concentrating is really hard. So studying I found really difficult. And so yeah, I was just like taking random subjects. I kind of had like ideas of what I wanted to do, but they weren't really possible because of my physical situation. But right now I'm looking at probably starting uni again next year, or at least planning kind of what I want to do and working towards that.
Yeah, because I think about, I mean, I'm sure you heard about Dave Mirra passing away, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's probably similar to like a lot of like professional athletes that just put themselves so much into it. But I mean, with Dave Mirra, he was at the point where he was at the age he needed to sort of retire from BMX, and he did, and then he just tried to fill that void. Like he became a triathlete, I believe,
Right.
and just all this other stuff. And I mean, obviously, in the end, it just he couldn't fill the void, or he just was never satisfied, and then he committed suicide, unfortunately.
Mm.
But it's tough when things are just so intense that it's tough to like replicate that with something else. I think that one thing that scootering taught me, or probably teaches a lot of people, is how to do things yourself and be really dedicated and just commit to something. So I feel like most scooter riders later in life, whatever they do, they'll know how to devote themselves to it and be successful with it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think I'll be fine. I think that, the recovery process of this is going to be pretty long, and I'm definitely never physically going to be 100%. It's an immune disease that's with me for life. I mean, I'm 24 now too, and I haven't really figured out what I want to do. But if I've learned anything from the last 5 years or whatever it is of this whole ordeal, it's been patience, really. So I'll figure things out. It'll just take time.
How did it feel to be on a scooter again after your time? Like, what was the first time that you got back on it?
Probably like halfway through last year, I had just like expressed to Kevin that like I thought that I was at the point where, if I was having a really good day, then I felt like I could maybe go ride for a little bit. So that obviously excited excited him and a lot of the other guys, I think, and they all chipped in like some spare parts to like build a scooter for me. And I just went to a skate park. I think at that point it kind of didn't really feel that good, actually, which was mostly just because it was still kind of painful to do. I think in order to even go do that, I like took a muscle relaxant, which was kind of stupid. As I think I've made a lot of progress in the last year with my physical health. Like in the last couple of months, it's been really fun. Mostly just because of the social aspect of it. I just missed so much. Like just hanging out at a skate park and there's nothing else going on. It's also kind of fun too because there's like no pressure associated with scootering for me. Like I'm never going to be a professional scooter rider ever again. If I go on scooter, it is all for fun. Don't have to film anything. I don't have to post anything on social media. I don't have to get any photos taken. It's pretty much just all about hanging out with my friends and doing something that I've missed for a long time. Shout out to Andrew and Matt as well, because once they found out that I was riding again, they sent me a space deck, which is like the best deck ever, and that's so fun to ride.
I always have so much respect for Andrew because I mean, like you said previously, when you met him, he just does everything himself and he's so determined. But yeah, about a year ago, I was interested in the space decks. I just texted him like asking him questions about it, and he just wrote. He like answered one, and then he just wrote like address question mark, and I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll just send you one, like no problem."
There was a similar thing with me. I just sent him a message. I just sent him a text message like letting him know how I was going, and I mentioned that I had started like scootering every now and then when I kind of felt good. And he was like, "Oh yeah, no worries, man. I'll get Matt to send you a deck." And I was like, "What?" Because like to get one of those into Australia, it's like 500 Australian dollars, so like ridiculously expensive. Like we don't even sell them here. You can only buy them from like directly from Andrew. But yeah, no, I felt very, very, very grateful. Andrew's a good guy.
Yeah, like being on Proto was never like being on a company. It was just sort of
Yeah.
like being friends with Andrew,
Yeah.
which in some cases was sort of the downfall about it, but it was great. So I remember seeing that friendly grip tape park montage, and I remember watching it and then being like, okay, like just watching it, and then you were in it, and I at first I it didn't even really go through my head, like I thought it was a different person, but then you had a couple more clips, and I was like, wait a second, that's Jackson. Like Jackson is riding. Was that like the debut of you riding again? Because I feel like that was the first.
I think so.
Yeah, because it was so funny. Because it's not like there were titles in that video or anything, you know.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like John, Kevin, and then it was like Jackson. Jackson is in this video.
Yeah, a lot of people sent me messages after that, which was really nice. That like
Yeah.
people still thought about me. That felt good.
Are you satisfied with your mark on scootering? Like, do you regret it regardless of the injury?
I think I kind of have to be satisfied with the mark I made because I'm it's not going to go any further than that. I've definitely played a part in expanding scootering in Sydney just through the job that I have, but in terms of the actual riding aspect of it, I've talked about a lot how angry I was and like disappointed I was, and kind of bitter I was that I had scootering cut off from me. But I don't feel that way anymore. I'm pretty grateful now that I can kind of go and scooter every couple of weeks when I feel like it, and it's gotten back to the point where it's just, if I do have the opportunity to go do that, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to have a lot of fun. I usually go just like ride a skate park. I don't even go out and ride street. I just ride a skate park when my friends are going there. And yeah, it's just really fun, man. It's all about the fun now. There's nothing really much more to it. And if I film a clip for Instagram or whatever, if someone wants to film me, then that's awesome, and that's fun too. But yeah, I think I'm pretty satisfied with whatever mark I left. I think that if friendly is any legacy to leave behind, if that's me and Aaron's legacy or whatever, then yeah, I'm happy with that.
Like scooter riders get really frustrated at people that aren't riding and creating stuff nonstop. Why can't you just appreciate what they have done, and like they have no obligation to do anything. They're just doing this because they love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I think people absolutely appreciate your video parts and still rewatch them. If they ever expected more from you, that would just be ridiculous.
I mean, I think that a lot of the pressure was taken off because people knew that I stopped because I had an injury. So it wasn't like I just quit because I was done with scootering.
And like you said about having no pressure to film or anything, I remember Andrew offered Connor Davidson a spot on the proto team, and Connor turned it down. And I remember at the time, I didn't understand it. I was so frustrated with Connor, but years later, I realized how mature of a decision that was because
Mm,
Connor turned it down because he didn't feel like it was out of so much respect for Andrew and Proto that Connor didn't feel like he could deliver enough to be on the team, and he just didn't feel like it'd be right, and I just couldn't see that at the time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like Connor just basically didn't want to be on the team and then not be able to film stuff, and for that to cause Andrew and Proto just waste their time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough. That's a very adult perspective. I miss that guy.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, he's another one like Alex. That's just a great guy to hang out with.
Does he still ride?
No, he doesn't.
What is he up to?
A couple, or maybe no, maybe less than 2 years ago, he was living in Portland after he graduated college, and my girlfriend and I went and visited him for about a week, and we just stayed with him. And I mean, we rode an indoor skate park like once, but he wasn't riding at the time or anything. But that's the thing, like that friendship was made from scootering, but like Tyler or Alex or you, we could just hang out and do things that didn't relate to scootering. And that's what we did all week when we were there in Portland.
And we did a lot of that in California too.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like there's a whole new wave of and it mainly out of the entire world. There's like a pretty large concentration of these internet famous vloggers from Sydney. Do you have any like interaction with that? And why are they all from Sydney?
To answer like whether I have any interaction with them, no. Like not now, I don't. Jack Dorth, who's probably the most well-known one from Sydney, again was a local at my skate park. So I've known him since he was like really, really young. He used to be a skateboarder back when he was like 11 and 12, and he would hang out at the skate park, and he was always a freak on a skateboard, and then he just swapped over to scootering. But yeah, I mean, I think that who are the other guys that do it? Wazza, Warwick Bainon does it, and he's a good dude. I've always liked Wazza. I mean, because I'm not really that involved with actually going out and riding actively and like filming and being kind of a part of that scene. I don't really know them that well, or I don't really interact with them. As to why there are so many, man, I don't even know the reason. I mean, there's money to be made. I guess that's definitely a reason. That's gotta. I mean, there's no way that that could not be a reason that motivates people to vlog every single day and make a video and like edit a 20-minute video every single day. Like, if you weren't making money for that, I don't know why anyone would bother.
Well, I mean, you definitely make money, but I think it's kind of an illusion with some of those people because it's like they're young and they're still living with their parents and stuff, and their vlogs seem to be sort of this like lifestyle, like they're just a scooter rider living off of scootering, but really their main sponsor is just their parents.
I mean, I don't think Jack lives at a home. I think he only just turned 18. Warwick, I don't know. The other guys, I have no idea. So yeah, maybe it is, but I mean, that whole thing seems exhausting to me. I don't know how I don't know how they do it. And I mean, I guess there's so many from here because Jack's obviously gotten really big. Maybe people are just seeing that and seeing what it can do for them, I guess, and trying to follow that path. I mean, I definitely don't back it for what it's worth. It's definitely popular, man. It's definitely pretty influential in terms of like their audience for new kids that are like starting out. Like if I just like speaking from a business perspective, of like where I work, the amount of business traffic in the last year at our store has increased so much, and it is like you if you ask one of these kids that come in to buy like their first complete scooters, half of them are doing it because they've watched Tanner Fox or like they've watched Capron and Corey Funk, and like that's how they've been exposed to scootering, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they're getting more people involved with scootering, but it's just unfortunate that that now that they're involved with scootering, they're being led in like this way that at least I don't think is very fulfilling or
I don't really see the value in it. And I mean, I'm not going to talk shit on any of those guys because they're all individuals with their own lives and they can do what they want. But from a perspective of someone watching it, it just seems like it's an avenue for kids to kind of live vicariously through these people that kind of display their lives as being super exciting, and they're always doing something crazy or like going somewhere and like meeting fans, and like it kind of paints the picture of a lifestyle that like young kids are very subject to wanting to kind of aspire to. But yeah, it seems kind of hollow. It doesn't have the creative value to me that like a video part does.
yeah, but unfortunately, those videos probably have more impact than video parts to the majority of people.
The other thing as well is that I think that those videos really appeal to like a very specific age range. I think once you're a mature adult, the appeal for those videos kind of diminishes. I'm not exactly like terrified that these new wave of kids are gonna like be trying to idolize those dudes and will like try and emulate those people forever because kids change. I like the people that I idolized when I first started scootering, and the way that I scooted when I first started was completely different to how I ended up when I finished riding. So
Those are all the questions I have, other than if you just wanted to give a brief recap of what you intend to do in the future?
Future for me is pretty much just, at the moment, is getting healthy, really. Picking something that I'm going to do and pursuing that. But for the most part, I'm kind of focusing on getting myself healthy enough and strong enough to the point where I will be able to pursue what I want to do. And that's not going to be scootering, and some people might be sad about that, but I'm pretty happy with where I am with it. What I'm doing now is just I'm working at Scooter Hut. I'm managing the store in Sydney with Kevin. The store is pretty amazing because it's really the only Scooter Hut store that's staffed entirely by scooter riders. It's become one of the biggest stores in Australia in the company, and it's all from being managed and from the direction of scooter riders, which I think is really awesome. So even though I'm not like scootering a lot, that side of things, like the working in the industry, has been pretty satisfying for me, because Scott, the guy who owns Scooter Hut, is a great guy, and he was obviously extremely supportive in keeping me employed, and having concessions to my health, and basically giving me the work that I wanted when I wanted it. So yeah, I've been happy working, doing what I'm doing, but at the moment I'm just looking at getting healthier. I'm scootering every now and then when I feel like it. Obviously, I've got a lot of interests outside of scootering, because that's not really what I do anymore. My girlfriend and I, Paulina, are probably looking at moving out together pretty soon. So I guess it's just adult stuff, man. Life.
Yeah, the world will always go on.
Yeah, that's it. The picture I was painting before was obviously pretty dark in what I've gone through, but I'm in a much better place now, physically and mentally. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
I mean that's good to hear, regardless of whether it has to do with scootering or not. I mean, in the end, that's really all you want. You just want your health.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. It was nice talking to you. I've missed your voice. I miss all of you guys.
Yeah, I know.
I'll have to make it back to the States soon.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you later then.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.
Have a good one, man. See you later.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Jackson. I was really excited to do it, and we got into a lot of topics that I hope will tell the story that everybody was wondering about. One thing to note, we referenced a lot of old scooter videos and scooter history that, if you don't know, is really significant for the formation of pretty much all modern day scootering today. And I linked to everything we discussed that was on the internet that I could link to in the description of this track on SoundCloud. So be sure to click the more button to pull down that full description, and all the links are in chronological order in terms of how they were discussed in the podcast. So you can watch those and sort of put like a visual reference to what we were talking about. And as always, thanks to Ben Bursell for the graphic design and music for this podcast. And of course, thanks to Jackson for thinking of this podcast, being interested in telling a story on it. I'm really grateful for that. And the next episode will be from another international person, but this time in a lot different of a place than Australia. So that should be very exciting. I always love hearing any suggestions, questions, ideas, just really anything you want to talk about. And all the people who've already emailed about just ideas for guests and stuff like that, thanks a lot. And if anyone would like to do so, just email thetandempod@gmail.com. Just so you guys remember, every episode premieres on the last Friday of every month. So be sure to look for the episodes coming out then. Thanks. See ya.